I'm Roy Rameriz. I worked with WKY Radio and Television from 1971 to 1981. And during that time, well, actually, I got started in broadcasting in 1970. I put a small station on the air in Anadarko, Oklahoma, KRPT, and I was there about a year and a half. After that, then I was hired at KNOR and was there just barely about 6 months when I was a chief engineer there at KNOR, and one of my assistants there asked me if I would send him a letter of recommendation to present to Channel 4 because there was an opening there at the time, and told him I'd be happy to, and I signed it for the young man. He took it in. The next thing I heard was I got a call from John Bushnell, who was the engineer there at Channel 4 when I went to work there. And he said, Roy Rameriz. Said, yes, sir. Said, do you know this gentleman? And I told him I did, that I recommended him highly. And we talked a few minutes, and then John says, Roy, I have a question for you. And I said, yes, sir. He said, would you consider maybe going to work with Channel 4? And I told him I hadn't thought about it, but I would love the opportunity. I never thought I'd have the opportunity. He asked me to come in for an interview, and he was always good with people talking to us, and he interviewed me, and the first thing you had to do was take an entry test. I think it was like 15, 20 questions. If I got 1 or 2 questions correct, it was a miracle. I know that there were probably people that had applied for the position that were a lot more qualified than I was. But fortunately, I guess the timing was right. The desperation was there at Channel 4, where EEOC was an important factor in broadcasting at that time. And I really feel that that was as much of the reason that I was hired there as anything. But I felt confident by the time I left that I had actually earned the position there. From that point, I met some very, very interesting people there at Channel 4, and of course, one of my favorite, and run right off the bat, of course, you have to work very closely with your directors. And at that time, I had the honor of working with Mr. Billy Nix, and Billy was just a remarkable, remarkable director. Sense of humor that wouldn't quit. And one of my favorite Billyisms, we used to call them, was there was a serious, serious story that broke one morning on the early morning news. At that time, there was, I think, 6:30, 7 o'clock news, and then at midday, and then, of course, the late afternoon. The early morning news broke with someone wanting to find out more information on a motorcycle that had been found submerged just off of the shoreline there at Lake Hefner, I believe it was. Might have been Lake Oberholzer. But they were asking anyone that has any information as to who might be the owner of the motorcycle, if there might have been an accident, or if someone might know the owner, or that he's missing, anything like that, please let the police department know. And it was a very serious story, and being one not to ever pass up an opportunity, I said, oh my goodness, Billy. And Billy seriously goes, what? I said, I think I know who it is. Billy says, hold on, everybody, hold on. Stand by, stand by. Roy thinks he knows who it is, that this is important. Hold on, guys. Roy, who is it? I said, I think it's Evil Cousteau. At that point, Billy lost it. You could hear the roar down on Studio B, and we had to go to a commercial shortly afterwards. But that was the type of humor that Billy just coaxed out of people. He enjoyed interacting with all the people that he worked with, and it was really a lot of fun. What a great man he was. A lot of the stories that I have are funny things, getting to know people and blend in with personalities. And another one that I like to tell is Mr. Bagwell at the time was our station manager, and he was ex-FBI agent. And he was walking in the studio one day, and I couldn't, again, he was smoking these, he always smoked these very expensive big cigars, and he came in smoking from the back, and I walked up to him, and I said, Mr. Bagwell? He said, yes, Roy. I said, do you have change for a 20? He said, yeah, sure, I think I got it right here. I said, well, could I borrow 10? And he started laughing at that point, and as a matter of fact, about a week and a half later, he came up to me and he goes, Roy, and he's got his big cigar in his mouth, said, I want you to know, says, I'm the chairman of the of the Chamber of Commerce downtown, and I used your story you used on me and said it got a resounding results. And so he was very proud of the fact that he got a big laugh out of the people. So he was a good man as well. Another point that I like to bring up is Joe Jerkins was was one of our, I guess, assistant general manager at the time, and he was coming down at one time there was a door that separated the main entrance into the working entrance back in around the studio area, and it was a glass door. So and coming from the glass door, there was the staircase that led from the offices of the Joe Jerkins and Bill Thrash and those people that were on the second floor. So as Mr. Jerkins was coming down, I had a good routine where I would kick my foot against the bottom of the door as I was opening it and jerk my head back as if I'd hit it. And so I did that one morning, perfectly timed with Joe Jerkins. And he comes, God bless him, he came running downstairs. Roy, are you all right? I said, what am I supposed to do at that point? I had already dug my hole in the ground, and I had my nose covered up. That I can't tell him it was just a joke. So I played it all out, and I went, yeah, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. You sure you don't need to go see a doctor? No, sir. No, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. He must have checked on me 2 or 3 times to make sure I was okay after that. But that was the type of attitude the station had at that time. Everyone that worked there was very, very easygoing. They were easy to work with. If you ended up making a mistake, people would work together to correct it. The engineers I worked with, my goodness, the history of those engineers, Willard Hines and Lester Tucker, and gracious, all of these great engineers that are now, for the most part, all of them gone. It was just an honor when I think back of the people I worked with, and of course the people on camera, the newsmen, Ernie Schultz, and all those people were just amazing people. The whole situation was that it was really a family back then. The original E.K. Gaylord, the original owner of WKY Radio and Television, was so caring about every one of his employees that every year he would come around at least once or twice a year, and he would greet literally everybody as if they were his personal friends. And I remember more than once. One time my oldest daughter had been ill with tonsillitis, and he came up, and he'd just show up whenever. We were doing in between tapings, and he walks in and he puts his hand on my shoulder and said, Roy, how are you doing? I said, fine, thank you, Mr. Gaylord. He says, how's Teresa? Did she get over her tonsillitis? I said, yes, sir. And he said, and Diana? I said, yes, everything doing fine. And we were about to have our youngest at the time. And I said, how's your wife feeling? How's that baby? I said, well, I guess they're going to be just fine. So it was a family. It was a big family at that time. And to have an owner of the entire operation that would take the time and come and greet everyone and make sure that they were happy with the situations, that they felt appreciated, it was amazing to me. I had heard of people getting bonuses when I first started in just working after being married, but I never really experienced it. So to come to WKY late summer and just before the holidays, to have Mr. Gaylord himself bring you an envelope and say, Roy, here's a little something for you for Christmas. I hope you can use it, and Merry Christmas to you. And to be there less than 3 months and receive the size of not only it was bigger than a monthly check at that time. As a bonus, it was just unreal. And he would have the Christmas parties for the employees every year, just right there at the studios. If you had children, each child got one toy and one practical gift, usually a pair of pajamas or for the boys, and a little nightgown for the girls. And it was always a wonderful, wonderful experience to sit there and watch this. And Hudson Schubert at the time, I think, was the Santa Claus. And that was amazing. The quality that the Channel 4 always presented on the air was amazing. We were talking not too long ago, and It's true. The quality that our programming and our presentation, our talent, on-air talent, was envied by the other stations. It was unreal. Equipment-wise, when I first started there, I guess they called them the TKs, the big giant things. We were still using those at remotes and even football games. And can you imagine using the leverage it took to get these huge things up the side of football fields, to get them mounted where we wanted to, up in the areas where we were going to, because at that time, going to broadcast from, at that time the cable was still 3/4 of an inch to an inch thick, and it was heavy stuff, and you were having to fly it and rope it up to hook it up to equipment, and then just trying to make sure that everything worked properly. But the thing was, when a new innovation came along, Channel 4 was always at the forefront of any big changes. At the time, which now the cameras equal to some of the things we have in our home that are broadcast quality. But at the time, we had the very first Marconis ever set up and bought in the United States. I mean, they came in, it was amazing. We had stations from other parts of the nation that were coming in to see these cameras. Our engineering department was just, again, amazing people that took this equipment, hooked it up, and then our video control equipment was just unbelievable. Our videotapes went from videotape reel to reel to cassettes, and then it just kept going. Like from at the time that I was working, it was 2-3-inch videotape, and then they ended up being the little cassette tapes. With little cassette tapes, they're big compared to how they are now, but nonetheless, any innovation, anything that could improve the quality of broadcasting, that could improve, also would be easier for the personnel to handle and to work with, and to give the best picture and the best quality. Mr. Gaylord or the Gaylord family always made sure that equipment was available to us as quickly as it became available. The other thing was the programs that I had that I was able to work with. One of them, for instance, Danny's Day. We had a number of interesting things happen with that. Danny had a number of a number of hostesses along the way, but one of them, I think, that we enjoyed. Well, I don't know. You'll probably be edited out. John Spivey, who was the organ player for Danny's Day, and I, since he was the morning cameraman for the farm show and the early morning news, after that part of the broadcast, we threw it back to the networks, and then we wouldn't have anything to do until rehearsal for Danny's Day. One morning, John and I went out in the back to the back entrance, and we were having, at that time, we were allowed to smoke, a smoking break, John was, and we were sitting out there, and Linda Scott was a young lady's name. I can't remember her real name now. But she comes in. John and I are watching her drive in. She comes in, gets out of the car. I swear this is the truth. She gets out of the car, removes her slacks she's wearing there in the parking lot, puts on another pair of slacks, and John and I are looking at each other like, are we really watching this? And she puts them on, comes back inside the building, and as she walks by, looks at us and goes, "What? They were dirty." And John goes, "Of course they were." So that was an interesting thing there, and all sorts of, and then the guests that Danny would have. It's amazing. Jerry Rogers and his and the production crew would put some of these interviews with these guests. I met everybody from Charlton Heston to Zsa Zsa Gabor and Barry Manilow. That's something else. Linda, since we're talking about her, was the hostess the day that Barry Manilow was a guest on Danny's Day. The interesting thing is that he had just come in after a skiing accident he had had the weekend before, and he was in a cast on his, I think his left leg, and he hobbled on the stage, and he sits down there, and of course Danny introduces Barry Manilow, blah, 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 and the whole bit, and the interview starts. This is the way Linda worked, and I don't know, it makes it interesting nonetheless. She goes, "Barry Manilow, I can't say I'm familiar with that name. Is it somebody we ought to know? Are you someone we should know?" And I guess it kind of rubbed him the wrong way. What we had done is set up a piano just to be a part of the backdrop for the set. Luckily, I had run a microphone to the piano, and I also had a microphone set up for his voice. I had not balanced it. I didn't have a chance to run an air check of any sort. But I guess it rubbed him the wrong way, because he got up on his cane. I can't remember if it was a cane or a crutch, but he hobbled over to the bench of this beautiful piano that we had lit and the whole bit. And Jerry's going, follow him, follow him, follow him. All the cameramen are going over there trying. Roy, get ready to turn on the microphones. And he sits there and he starts tuning up. And he goes, all of a sudden he goes, dun 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 dun. That's mine, Kentucky Fried Chicken. And then there was another one that he did. I can't remember what it was. And then he goes in to Mandy, which had just been released. I had to do the balance while he was going through the other things, and I got the balance as well as I could. And as I did every day during a show, if we had a performer, I'd record it to play it back later, see how the balance sounded or not. And so the show finished up, and he left, and I'm downstage tearing down, but I'm feeding what I had recorded back to myself down on stage through the speakers. And I'm listening to his blend, and I was pretty satisfied with how quickly we were able to balance it. And I was listening to it while I'm tearing down the set from Danny's day that day. And back door opens up, and Mr. Manilow comes back in. He said, what are you listening to? And I told him, I said, the blend that we got on. Said, who did the blend? And I told him, well, I did. And he said, are you the audio person? I said, yes, sir. He said, how would you like to come to work with our group? And I said, I don't know if I would or not. He said, well, it would entail being on the road 48 weeks out of the year. And at that point, I told him, no, I don't think I'd be interested, but thank you. But that was a compliment to me, at least the blend of music, I guess, was to his satisfaction if he knew the music, and he was pleased with it. It kind of gave me my own attaboy. But somebody used to say, never mind, we can't go there either. You can have 1,000,000 attaboys. You can get 1,000,000 attaboys, but one crap wipes them all out. So anyway, that's the way it goes. Some of the most colorful things about Channel 4 at that time, since we did all the taping out of Studio B and C and the like, were some of our clients. And one of the funniest guys, I guess, was a car dealer out of Yukon, and he talked with a lisp, and his name was Alan Merrill. And he always found he sort of sounded like this, and he always found some angle due to a special agreement with the Mexican market. We need all of the used cars possible, and if you come to Alan Merrill Chevrolet, we won't give you any gimmicks, we'll offer you honest deals. For instance, if you're one of the first to come in next week, we'll give you absolutely free 5,000 S&H green stamps, or we'll give you a balloon for the kiddies or whatever. This was his angle. So, we couldn't resist it. At that time was Sleepwalkers Matinee, and it was not Sleepwalkers. What was that? With John Ferguson hosting it, and John had asked me to write a skit and to include. We were having the Son of King Kong was the movie, and he said, "Can you do a thing on do a skit that we can do around that movie?" So I wrote an impromptu skit, and in the skit, it was going to be the disbursement of property according to the will of King Kong, and the person that had been assigned as the trustee was going to be there to read the will in front of Mr. Ape, who was going to be one of the beneficiaries, and the like. So I had a dark cloak on, and of course I was going to be the trustee, and they introduced me, and of course the background of the deep bell ringing, like because I was kind of dressed up like the death, the guy with the anyway. So I came down the stairs, and Mr. Ape and John Ferguson were sitting there at the table, and they said, "Okay, listen, he's about to speak," and so immediately it goes, "Due to a special purchase, due to a special agreement with King Kong, I'm allowed to disperse these belongings." And they look at each other and they close off along the way. But in order to do that, I had to get the special permission of Mr. Merrill, to use his voice to do the skit. And I called him up, and Linda was his secretary, and I said, Linda, may I speak with Mr. Merrill? Said, yes, hold on just a second. On the other end, I heard, hello. I said, Mr. Merrill? Yes, Roy. I said, listen, I have written a script, and I went around the whole story of how I wanted to use it for Count Gregor's matinee or whatever it was called. And I wanted to use his voice as part of the skit. And he said, listen, Roy, I don't care what you do, just don't make me look like a a-hole. You may want to edit around that. But anyway, so we did that. And the other thing was, and that this is when I took it too far, unintentionally. I really thought they would be able to tell the difference between Mr. Merrill's voice and mine. I called up one afternoon just before I left the studio at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was actually about 1 o'clock. And I called the dealership. I still feel bad about this even today. And the phone rings at the dealership, and Linda answers. And I said, Linda? He said, yes, sir. Do you know who this is? I said, yes, sir. Listen, I'm out here at the airport, and I need a couple of cars and drivers. All right, sir. Very good. All right, talk to you later. And I hung up. Didn't think anything about it. About an hour or so later, as I'm getting ready to leave, I'm called to Studio B. There's a phone call for me. And I'm sure you're going to edit around this, too. There's, on the other end, I said, Studio B, Rameriz, may I help you? And I hear this, Roy? I said, yes, sir. You know who this is? I said, yes, sir. Do you know how damn expensive it is to send 2 cars and 2 drivers to the airport? I said, I'm sorry, Mr. Merrill. I'm very sorry. I thought you knew. I thought she knew. Yeah, well, we'll talk. I said, okay. So that was my one claim to fame with Mr. Merrill, but we remain good friends. I know that Don Webb had asked me to do a presentation before him using his voice and doing one of his skits. And Don Webb was one of our top salesmen there at Channel 4 when it was still WKY radio and TV. And that's just some of the stories that I love telling about these people. As time went on, I was, I guess, entrusted with more and more honors there at Channel 4. Russell Pearson, the director of Farm News and Weather. At that time, the assistant director was Ken Root. They would travel quite a bit, particularly during the fall, to take a lot of their viewers on special cruises and the like. And both of them at times would have to be out of the office. And Russell asked me if I would consider filling in for them doing the morning farm news and weather while they were out of town. I told him I'd be honored to. So I did that for a number of years, and always had a good opportunity to meet a lot of the people. And then after that, I was given another opportunity. George Wesley, who was the one of the management people there at Channel 4, said, Roy, we're thinking of starting a program on Saturdays at noon, and we're calling it Unity. And it's going to be hosted by 3 different people, and it's going to be presented every other week by one of the minority representative hosts. The representatives were Michael Black, who was a young man. He was a journalist here in Oklahoma City who would be hosting the program aimed at the black community. Jerome Bushyhead, who was going to be the host for the Indian program, the Native American program. And then I would host the Hispanic program aimed at the Mexican-American community. I did that, I guess, for about 8 years until I left Channel 4, but that was an extreme compliment to me. And I don't feel like I ever did it justice, but there was an opportunity I wouldn't have missed, and it was an honor that I wouldn't have had anywhere else if I hadn't worked there at Channel 4. Some of the great people that I worked with there, I'll never forget. Again, the engineers there, the talented Ernie Schultz, Ron Turner, Steve Newman, all these guys that used to work in the news department back there, the weathermen, just amazing people, Jim Williams and people like that. So it was really a wonderful opportunity, and there's just a lot of. I could probably keep going on forever, but I know that need to cut it short anyway. So, but we'll talk about some other things. There was a time when we would take our live feeds from the network at, I think, about 3:30 in the afternoon in the videotape room. At that time, we were still downloading to the huge metal tapes, 2-inch wide videotape. And the network would start feeding us all of the stories for the day, nationally and worldwide. And I can't remember which flight it was, but there was an Apollo flight that was taking place at the time, and they did their introduction. You know, today's feed will be from the Apollo, whatever number it was that was up there, and they cut into it, and a little bit into it, one of the people talking from the capsule says, "There goes one. Look, there's another one over there. Now they're on this side. You can't tell me there's not somebody following us. Look, look." And it said, now it's over here, and the camera that they had on there would pan, and you could see these things moving from side to side. And all of a sudden, the screen goes black. And the instructions pop up. From this point, whatever the number was, from 3,300 to 4,100, from point here to point there, is not it's not for air. It's not for release on air, should be edited and destroyed, so on and so forth. So they closed it off. The first thing I did, being me, is I cut off the tape there, kept it, set up another tape to take up the reel on, and I just put that in my locker, and I had it there. I had a serious operation shortly thereafter that required me to be gone from Channel 4 for a couple of months while I recuperated. And when I went back to check my locker, that tape was missing. So it's just one of those stories that it's just a story. It's going to be like if you've seen a ghost or not. I know what we took down and what was on that tape, and that's why I cut it down and put it in my locker to save it and look at it later. I guess since then, I've kept my foot in the door as far as broadcasting goes. I do a lot of voiceovers. I've done some on-camera work for places like Frontier City, Made in Oklahoma products, and do a lot of voiceovers, or have done for people like 7-Eleven and the like. I'm what they call now semi-retired entrepreneur. My definition of an entrepreneur is it's a fancy word for unemployed, but nonetheless, I have invented a product that I have 4 patents with two of them pending. And the news that we received even as early as last evening, I was invited to appear on the show with Jay Leno to give an explanation or to do an interview with him regarding this product. And he's also asked me to come in for a photo shoot to demonstrate the product and also list it on his Jay's Garage website. So hopefully something good will happen out of that. The industry is one of those things that it's either your best friend or your worst enemy. And I guess I've been on both ends of it. But the worst enemy side was, if there were errors, they were my errors and not the industry's errors. I wouldn't have passed it up. It's given me some experiences, some memories that I'll take with me forever. The wonderful people that I worked with, the talent that I was surrounded by, the opportunities I was given, and all the people, the clients that we met just have made this just such a wonderful part of my life, and I'll always be thankful for it. So hopefully we'll be able to do a little bit more in the future, but I think for now I've had enough. Roy Rameriz, thank you.